name is Layla and this is Layla Flicks. Our movie today begins with a vampire named Dracula. He is playing with his little daughter named Mavis, whom he is raising and taking care of. He tells her stories, sings for her, and even trains her to fly. After that, his assistant arrives and tells him that he has prepared a place that no human could ever reach, because it is surrounded by cemeteries filled with frightening and terrifying spirits. Then Dracula appears holding a picture of his deceased wife, talking to her, telling her that he has finally built the place they had always dreamed of, for the sake of their daughter Mavis, so that no one could ever hurt her or come near her. Years pass, and we see a large number of ghosts visiting Dracula's place, which has by then been turned into a huge hotel. Dracula celebrates with the guests in his hotel, a place no human has ever managed to enter since it was built. He then presents a schedule of events for his daughter Mavis's birthday. Relatives and friends of Dracula arrive, and he greets them warmly, thanking them for coming to celebrate his daughter's birthday. Dracula then shows them pictures of some of their human enemies. Next, Mavis appears in her room, practicing the speech she is going to give to her father Dracula to ask him to let her go out and see the world freely, just as he had promised her on her 118th birthday. At that moment, Dracula enters her room, wishing her a happy birthday. She tells him that she needs to talk with him about something important. He responds that he remembers his promise and that he will keep it, allowing her to go out as she wishes. Mavis becomes very excited, takes her bag, and tells him that she wants to go to the place where he first met her mother. But Dracula tells her that their relatives and friends have come especially to celebrate her birthday, and it would be rude to leave and abandon them. Dracula lets her go to the nearby village where humans live, as her first step outside. He hugs her and thanks her for trusting him and for keeping the promise he had given her. Relatives suddenly enter the room, and she tells them excitedly that she is finally going out of the castle for the first time in her life. But one of their relatives frightens Dracula, asking him how he could let his only daughter go to the terrifying humans who hate them. Meanwhile, we see Mavis transform into a bat and fly out of the castle toward the human village, as agreed with her father. Then Dracula is shown, having gone ahead of his daughter in order to watch her from afar. She finds that there are no people in the village. Suddenly, she sees a group of people moving toward her with fire and burning stakes. Mavis becomes afraid, leaves them, and flies away, saying that her father was right. Thus, Dracula's plan succeeds. He had arranged for the dead to help him by playing the role of the humans of the village, so that his daughter would erase the idea of leaving the castle from her mind. Dracula goes in to check on his daughter and asks her what she did when she went out. He finds her upset, and she tells him that he was right in his opinion about humans. Dracula hugs her and tells her he is sad that her experience did not work out. Suddenly, a human boy enters the hotel. His name is Johnny. When everyone sees Dracula, they panic and ask Johnny how he managed to reach the hotel. Johnny tells him that he was climbing mountains with his friends and heard strange sounds coming from the spooky forest nearby. He saw people there with fires, followed them, discovered the hotel, and wanted to explore it. One of the hotel guests is shown, annoyed at the hotel's service. Dracula is forced to grab Johnny quickly, hide him in a room, search him, and find his phone, from which music is playing. Dracula fears for the reputation of his place. If anyone learns that a human has entered, and especially if Mavis sees him, she will know her father lied to her and that humans are not evil at all. Next, Johnny appears, telling Dracula that he is imitating real vampires by wearing their costumes, still unaware that he is standing in front of a real vampire. Johnny looks around at the clothes hanging in the place, amazed, and Dracula decides to disguise Johnny to look like a monster like them. He takes him out, and they meet the cook. They chat about food while Johnny marvels at the guests. Suddenly, Johnny comes face to face with a skeleton. He is terrified when he realizes it is a real skeleton, runs around screaming at the sight of the ghosts everywhere, and crashes into Dracula. Dracula grabs him, hides him quickly, and Johnny finally realizes that this is the real Dracula, not just a costume or masquerade party. Dracula asks him to calm down and control himself, assuring him that he won't drink his blood as humans believe. He tells him he built this place for all the creatures persecuted by humans. Then Dracula transforms into a bat, lifts Johnny, and tries to carry him out of the hotel. Suddenly, Mavis shows up, and Dracula is forced to bring Johnny back inside. Dracula lies to his daughter again, telling her he brought Johnny to help him prepare for her birthday party. She is surprised by her father's odd behavior, which seems unnatural. Suddenly, the guests appear, asking Dracula to sing with them like in the old days, but he refuses. Mavis talks to Johnny, telling him that her mother was the one who chose her name. When she asks him about his own name, he gets nervous and blurts out a name he had overheard earlier in the hotel. She replies that it is the name of her cousin. So he quickly pretends that he is indeed her cousin, trying to imitate Frankenstein, who is confused by his presence and asks Dracula about him. Dracula answers that Johnny is Mavis's cousin. Dracula continues, telling everyone that Johnny is here to plan the party in a new way and organize fun events. The first event begins, a song from Dracula's relatives, but it is extremely boring. Johnny interrupts them, asking them to speed up the rhythm. The guests react positively to him, but Dracula notices and insists they stick to his own schedule, which for the others is very dull. Then Johnny plays a song from his phone, and the guests get excited and cheerful. The buffet opens, and the guests rush to the food table. Everyone begins eating except Johnny and Dracula, who are sitting together talking. Johnny asks Dracula to try the food, but he refuses and pulls him aside. He warns him that if the guests discover he is human, it will be a disaster. Dracula orders him to pretend his back hurts in front of the others so they will leave. But the guests misinterpret this, thinking he wants them to climb on each other's backs and play. Dracula's plan to get Johnny out fails. He grabs Johnny by force, takes him away, and tries to erase his memory of everything that happened. But Johnny tells him that he is wearing contact lenses that help him see better, so Dracula threatens him, if he doesn't leave, he will destroy him. On the way, they run into Mavis, who takes Johnny on a tour of the hotel. They climb to the roof and see the whole place from above. Johnny tells her that from there he can see a beautiful city nearby. She asks him about it and about Hawaii, so he tells her he once went to a party there. She is also fascinated by the sunrise, which she sees for the first time from a distance without touching it. Meanwhile, Dracula is in the sauna talking with his relatives, who ask him about Johnny. They say he seems like a nice guy and that his daughter is attracted to him. Dracula rejects the idea angrily. On the other side, Johnny suddenly falls off the roof and lands on Dracula's leg. Then we see Dracula and Johnny together again. Johnny is amazed at the way Dracula arranges the tables, which move by themselves. Johnny climbs on one of them to fly around, and Dracula jumps on another table, chasing him. When Mavis asks her father about Johnny, Dracula gets upset and asks if she likes him, but she pretends not to. Later, the cook discovers Johnny is human and kidnaps him to cook for dinner. A guard alerts Dracula, who rushes to stop it. The cook accuses him of siding with humans, so Dracula claims Johnny isn't one. A test proves otherwise, and Dracula quickly pulls Johnny out. They enter a room of photos of Dracula's wife. Johnny says her image appears in human museums and recalls a legend: a man, his wife, and child perished in a fire, their souls still wandering. Dracula corrects him: only his wife died, burned alive when humans attacked. He built the castle to protect Mavis. Johnny says times have changed, but admits he can't prove it. Dracula begs him to stay for Mavis's birthday. The next morning, Dracula places her gift on her bed. At the party, everyone celebrates. Mavis tells Dracula she wants to explore the world like Johnny. Dracula admits he invented the village story to scare her. Suddenly, the cook exposes Johnny's identity, terrifying guests. Shocked, Johnny watches as Mavis hugs him, saying she doesn't care. Hurt, he claims to hate monsters and leaves. Dracula finds Mavis on the roof, heartbroken, asking him to erase her memory and saying she no longer has dreams. Later, hotel guests demand their bills after learning a human entered. Dracula begs them to help find Johnny, insisting he's different. They track him using a relative's child's keen sense of smell and rush toward the airport. They go out to search for Johnny and find his t-shirt on the road. Dracula asks a relative to track him by scent. The relative calls his kids to help, and his little daughter sniffs the shirt, revealing Johnny's exact location. Dracula and his relatives jump into a car and race to catch Johnny before he leaves. On the way, they meet a human who jokes with them, surprising them with his friendliness. When they ask about the airport, someone shows them the way. One of Dracula's monster friends enters the festival to scare people, but instead they clap. He insists he's real, but they say they love him anyway. He shares Mavis's story and asks the crowd to help Dracula reach Johnny without sunlight touching him. Everyone raises a large cloth to shade Dracula, who runs beneath it until he reaches the plane. But the plane has already taken off. Dracula transforms into a bat and flies, the sun burning him as he pushes toward Johnny. He calls out through the window, but Johnny can't hear clearly. Dracula flies to the front, clings to the windshield, hypnotizes the pilots, and makes an announcement. He confesses he wronged Johnny by trying to keep his daughter safe, but now knows she deserves freedom and is glad she chose someone kind. He begs forgiveness. Back at the hotel, Dracula apologizes to Mavis and gives her a birthday gift, a travel bag. Inside is Johnny, who admits he only claimed to hate monsters out of fear of her father. Dracula then gives her a ticket to Hawaii so she and Johnny can fulfill her dream of exploring the world together. Our movie begins at Hotel Transylvania, where the wedding of Johnny, the human boy who stumbled into Dracula's hotel and fell in love with his daughter Mavis, is being held. Dracula dances with his daughter, who asks why her grandfather didn't attend. Dracula explains he doesn't approve of her relationship with a human. She wonders if Dracula still sees Johnny as a bad person. He replies that nothing matters more than her happiness. A year later, Mavis and Johnny tell Dracula they want to fly away together. Though confused, he agrees. Dracula and Mavis transform into bats and soar into the sky. Suddenly, Dracula is shocked to discover his daughter is pregnant. Overjoyed, he listens as Mavis says she isn't sure if the baby will be vampire or human. She hopes the child will be like Johnny. Time passes, and Mavis gives birth to a boy, Dennis. On his first birthday, Dracula argues with Johnny's family, who believe Dennis is clearly human, while Dracula insists he may be a vampire. When Dennis turns 2, Mavis calls Johnny. He rushes in with Dracula, and she tells them Dennis has spoken his first word, blah blah. Dracula grows frustrated with the new methods hotel staff use since Johnny began interfering. He finds them online, and Johnny explains it's the best way to spread the word about the hotel, especially with humans now visiting. At night, Dracula sneaks into Dennis's room to teach him how to transform into a bat. Mavis interrupts and reminds Dracula Dennis must sleep early for school. Dracula argues that there's a party for young monsters Dennis should attend. But Mavis says Dennis is human and cannot play with their monster relatives. She asks him to show Dracula the cartoon he loves, one about monsters made by humans. Dracula joins in until they both fall asleep. Later, when the party begins, Dracula thanks Mavis for letting Dennis attend. Suddenly, Dennis's first tooth falls out. Dracula is thrilled, believing he'll grow fangs, but Mavis insists he is human and will never have them. Dracula is devastated when Mavis reveals plans to move to California, where Johnny grew up. She says it's safer for Dennis. Johnny nervously says they haven't decided. Later, Frankenstein learns of the issue and advises Dracula to spend more time with his grandson, suggesting he babysit while Mavis and Johnny take a vacation. Then Dracula could secretly teach Dennis how to be a monster before 5, because if Dennis shows no vampire traits by then, he'll remain human forever. So Dracula makes a deal with Johnny. Before leaving, Mavis explains Dennis's schedule to her father. She offers to take Dennis, but Dracula insists he stay and promises daily video calls. As soon as they depart, Dracula gathers his monster friends. They drive off, planning to teach Dennis to be a real monster. Meanwhile, Mavis enjoys her trip with Johnny, eager to explore his past. While exploring, she tries calling the hotel, but Johnny distracts her. Dracula and his friends arrive at the old training grounds. They dress Dennis as a monster. Each friend tries to teach him. Frankenstein attempts scaring, but the girls laugh and take selfies. Wayne the werewolf half-heartedly chases a deer but ends up fighting a dog over a frisbee. Murray the mummy collapses from back pain, amusing Dennis. Meanwhile, Mavis explores the city, fascinated by human life. She rides a bike perfectly, impressing children, and tells Johnny it's ideal for raising Dennis. She then tries calling her father to check on Dennis. Dracula, who is with Dennis, panics when he sees Mavis calling. Before answering, he quickly puts sunglasses on Dennis, pretending they were playing superhero games. Mavis notices Dennis wearing sunglasses and finds it strange. Dracula cuts the call short, saying the network is bad. Mavis believes Dennis is fine and enjoying his time with his grandfather. But Dracula grows worried because he realizes Mavis is happy there, and that means she might never change her mind about moving. Later, Dennis wakes up and tells his grandfather he misses his mom and dad. Dracula decides to take him to the vampire summer camp, the same camp where he himself learned as a child how to hunt rats and use his powers. But Dennis becomes more interested in the children's tennis game at the camp. Dracula meets the camp supervisor and asks him to teach Dennis the basics of being a vampire, because he is developing slowly. Dracula is upset by the camp's new teaching style, which is very different from the strict way he learned as a child. That night, Dracula takes Dennis and decides to teach him his way, the old-school method. He throws Dennis from the top of a tower, hoping his vampire wings will sprout. But Dennis falls, and Dracula barely manages to catch him at the last second before he hits the ground. Dracula panics and tries to hypnotize him, but it doesn't work because the supervisor is also a vampire. Meanwhile, Mavis and Johnny visit Johnny's parents, who welcome them warmly. Johnny's mother shows Mavis their home, the room prepared for them, and all the things they bought for Dennis. She also tells them that they invited the neighbors to meet Mavis. The neighbors arrive dressed as monsters to impress her and convince her to stay in California. Mavis apologizes to Johnny while they sit on the rooftop. She says people are treating her strangely, but Johnny explains that they are only trying to make her feel at home. Mavis tells him she doesn't care about that, what matters is raising Dennis far from the hotel, so he can experience life and not grow up like her, strange and sheltered. Johnny tells her she is beautiful, and if their son grows up like her, he'll be the luckiest person in the world. She hugs him, saying they will be happy anywhere as long as they are together. Then Mavis sees a video on Johnny's phone showing Dennis at the hotel, surrounded by fire. She immediately panics and calls her father to ask where they are. Dracula gets nervous and decides to return to the hotel quickly. Mavis rushes to the airport to buy a ticket, but the clerk coldly tells her there are no direct flights. Angry, Mavis transforms into a bat, grabs Johnny, and flies to the hotel herself. At the same time, Dracula is flying back with Dennis. They both arrive at the hotel at the same time as Mavis. She is furious and shows him the video she saw. She tells him that before, she was afraid Dennis might live among monsters, but now she is even more afraid he might live with his reckless grandfather. Dracula tries to justify his actions, but Mavis tells him he allowed humans into the hotel, yet never into his heart. She takes Dennis and decides to move to California. Mavis enters Dennis's room to pack his things. She finds him pretending to be a bat, saying he can fly. She tells him they are going to visit his grandparents in California. Dennis asks about his grandfather Dracula. Mavis answers that he has to stay behind to take care of the hotel, but promises Dennis they will call him every night and visit from time to time. Meanwhile, Johnny's relatives arrive at the hotel because Mavis had invited them. Dracula is shocked to learn that his daughter invited her grandfather, a man who hates humans, to meet Dennis. Dracula rushes to warn Johnny that his father must not discover they are humans, otherwise he would kill them. Johnny decides to tell his family the party is a masquerade and that they all have to dress up like monsters and vampires. Dracula even trains Johnny to speak like a monster. When Mavis's grandfather arrives at the hotel, Dracula greets him warmly and asks Frankenstein to keep him away from the humans as much as possible. Mavis's grandfather asks about Dennis. When Dennis comes in, the grandfather inspects his teeth to see if he has fangs. He tells Dracula that Dennis's fangs might just be late in appearing, just like Dracula's were when he was young. He uses the stage performance to try to frighten him. At the same time, Dracula admits to his daughter that he was trying to make her stay at the hotel and not move to California. Mavis becomes furious, realizing Johnny was also part of the plan. She fights with both her father and her husband. Upset, Dennis runs away, crying. That's when Mavis's grandfather realized that Johnny and his family were humans, not vampires. He shouted at Dracula's son, who told him that he didn't hate humans and that his grandson was the kindest and sweetest child he had ever seen. And if he wouldn't love him just because he was half human, that would mean he was a fool. Mavis hugged her father after hearing his words. Then everyone was surprised that Dennis was missing. He goes outside the hotel and sits sadly with one of the monster children, telling her he is upset because he isn't like them. Suddenly, a huge monster appears and tries to kidnap Dennis. Everyone in the hotel starts searching for him. In that terrifying moment, Dennis's fangs finally emerge, and he transforms into a bat. He attacks the monster, breaks its teeth, and defeats it. Dracula helps him, and then hugs his grandson proudly. He asks Mavis to let Dennis stay in the hotel. She agrees, and everyone rejoices at the decision. They all decide to visit each other every vacation, so the family can stay united. Our movie today begins with Dracula living in Transylvania. He appears on a train with his monster friends, all disguised as humans so no one will recognize them. Suddenly, a mad scientist bursts in and warns the passengers that monsters are among them, disguised, and that he can easily hunt them down. He lights a match, terrifying the monsters. They jump to the roof of the train, but Dracula confronts him, saying he has defeated his ancestors and will defeat him too. All of the scientists' attempts to kill Dracula fail. Years later, we see Dracula preparing for his daughter Mavis's wedding at their hotel. One of the monster relatives is nervous about her own marriage. Mavis comforts her, saying it's normal to be nervous, and reminds her that her father Dracula felt the same on his wedding day. We then see Dennis, Dracula's grandson, misbehaving at the wedding with his dog. Johnny steps in to save the day by acting as the DJ, getting all the monsters dancing. At that moment, a beautiful woman approaches Dracula and asks him to dance. But he gets flustered, runs away, and his friends tell him he must move on after his wife's death and find love again. Dracula insists he is content with his daughter, her husband, and his grandson. Still, when he is alone, he feels lonely. He even tries to meet new people through his phone. Just then, Mavis walks in, startling him. He quickly hides his phone, pretending to be cleaning. When she notices the phone in his pocket, he says he was only searching for someone to help him clean the hotel. She assumes he's overworked. He thanks her and gently sends her out before she can discover the truth. Mavis then decides to surprise her father by booking a family vacation, thinking he needs a break. Though Dracula doesn't like surprises, she assures him everything is planned so he can relax. Meanwhile, Dennis sneaks his dog along, hiding it because animals aren't allowed. The family arrives at their vacation spot, the Bermuda Triangle, where they find many old sunken ships. Their vacation is aboard a massive cruise ship made for monsters. Everyone enjoys the cruise, though Dracula is unimpressed, saying all these activities could be done at his hotel. Murray the mummy disagrees, saying Dracula's hotel doesn't float on water. Suddenly, Dracula's eyes sparkle and his heart races when he sees Erica, the ship's captain, welcoming everyone aboard. Mavis panics, thinking her father is having a heart attack, but he is simply smitten with Erica. She announces that the cruise's final destination will be Atlantis, the legendary lost city. Erica approaches Dracula to greet him. He freezes, speaking gibberish, until his friends pull him away. He admits to them that he is in love. That evening, a party takes place on the ship. The monsters enjoy the deck. Wayne the werewolf is thrilled to find a kids' play area where his dozens of children can stay all day. For the first time, he has peace and quiet. Erica sneaks into the engine room, where we discover her grandfather is none other than the mad scientist who once tried to kill Dracula. She tells him he was right, that monsters are disgusting creatures. She admits that when she first met Dracula, she wanted to destroy him immediately. But her grandfather insists she stick to the long-term plan. He has found the weapon of destruction in Atlantis, and he needs Dracula alive until then. Despite her grandfather's warnings, Erica plots to kill Dracula on her own. But each attempt fails, with Dracula always escaping unharmed. Dracula later asks his friends what his daughter would think if he loved someone other than her mother. They tell him that Mavis just wants him to be happy, and she would support him. Mavis herself later tells Dracula she's glad they're having family time together. The family plays together in the pool. Then Erica announces their first stop, an underwater volcano. Everyone puts on diving gear to explore it. Dracula's friends encourage him to believe that Erica likes him too. But Dracula insists he's only here to enjoy the family trip. Underwater, they explore the volcano with a tour guide. Meanwhile, Erica follows Dracula in a submarine disguised as a fish, planning to kill him. But schools of fish swarm her, and the monsters think her submarine is a real fish, taking selfies with it. Mavis realizes Erica is nearby. Dracula's friends overhear Erica muttering about Dracula but misunderstand, thinking she is in love with him. Later, Erica agrees to meet Dracula at a Mexican restaurant on the ship. Meanwhile, Dennis's dog keeps barking at the mad scientist, but Dennis takes him away, not realizing the danger. The ship reaches its next stop, a deserted island. Dracula suggests Mavis and Johnny take time alone while he watches Dennis. Mavis, however, worries about her father's strange behavior. She tells Johnny she never imagined her dad with anyone other than her mom. That night, Dracula dines with Erica. She puts extra garlic sauce in his food to harm him, but he survives. He opens up to her, talking about his wife's death, raising Mavis alone, and refusing to remarry all these years. Erica tells him her grandfather raised her after her parents died. Meanwhile, Dennis tells his parents that his grandfather went out with Erica. Mavis grows angry, saying this was supposed to be a family trip. At the same time, Erica's grandfather scolds her for disobeying orders and trying to kill Dracula. When two of Dracula's friends overhear him, he captures and locks them away. Finally, the ship arrives at Atlantis. Dracula searches for Mavis, wanting to confess the truth. Mavis follows him and sees him with Erica. Erica enters an underground chamber to retrieve the weapon of destruction. Dracula follows and saves her when she triggers traps. Shocked that a vampire would rescue a human, she asks why. He replies that there's no difference between them, and he would save anyone in danger. Every trap she triggers, Dracula saves her. Eventually, she finds the weapon, the instrument of destruction. She takes it to her grandfather, who is overjoyed, ready to destroy all monsters. The monsters prepare for a big dance party on the ship. But it's a trap by the mad scientist. Mavis learns her father has feelings for Erica and worries about losing him. Johnny reassures her that love can unite people, even if they are different. Later, Erica admits to Dracula she has grown feelings for him. She apologizes, saying she was wrong about monsters. But her grandfather begins playing the instrument of destruction, awakening a giant sea monster. Dracula orders all the monsters to flee as the beast attacks. He and Mavis try to fight it, but the monster targets Dracula. Erica steps in, saving him, telling her grandfather he is wrong about monsters. She apologizes to Dracula, admitting she loves him. Her grandfather angrily resumes playing the music to control the monster. But Johnny responds by playing upbeat, positive music. The monster begins dancing instead of destroying. A music battle ensues, until Johnny's song finally overpowers the destructive melody. The monster surrenders, and everyone celebrates. The mad scientist falls from a high place, but Dracula saves him. Surprised, the old man realizes there's no real difference between humans and monsters. He apologizes for hunting them all those years and offers to pay for the entire cruise as an apology. Dracula and his family return to the hotel. On the rooftop, Dracula finally proposes to Erica. Our movie today begins with Dracula sitting and singing at the window of his room. He remembers the old days when his home was just a castle surrounded by the hotel. He also recalls the time when his daughter Mavis first met Johnny in that same castle, and how Johnny chose to marry her and live in the world of monsters and vampires. We then see everyone celebrating the hotel's anniversary. Johnny surprises the family by going up on stage and singing a song with the help of Frankenstein. Dracula takes the stage to thank him and announces to the crowd that he has a surprise to reveal at midnight. He leaves the stage while the band keeps playing and goes outside to talk with his wife Erica. She tells him not to worry about Johnny, since she knows he is overly enthusiastic. Dracula complains that Johnny's enthusiasm always ruins things, but she tells him that life can't always go exactly his way. Johnny's ideas are different, especially since Dracula is nearing retirement and the place will one day belong to Mavis and Johnny. Mavis overhears them with her super hearing. She is excited by the idea that her father might hand over the hotel. She runs to tell Johnny, who is shocked. He has always felt Dracula didn't like him or see him as part of the family because he wasn't a vampire. Johnny tries to stay calm until Dracula makes the official announcement. Later, Dracula practices his speech behind the curtain, preparing to hand the key of the hotel to his daughter. Suddenly Johnny bursts in, overexcited. Dracula blurts out that he can't give him the hotel because he's not responsible enough. Then Dracula comes up with an excuse. He says that by law, humans cannot inherit vampire property. If a human inherits, ownership must be redistributed. He apologizes to Johnny, who is deeply hurt. Johnny realizes he can't risk losing the hotel because of this rule. Just then the curtain opens, and everyone claps, expecting Dracula's big reveal. Mavis is thrilled, waiting to hear her father announce it. But Dracula, under pressure, changes his speech. Instead of handing over the hotel, he announces plans to expand it. Mavis is disappointed, and Dracula feels guilty for ruining her excitement. Later, Erica asks him why he changed his mind, but he pretends not to hear her and runs away. Mavis also notices Johnny is upset. He later confides to Erica's grandfather, the inventor Van Helsing, that he feels like a failure. Van Helsing tells him he has an invention that can help, a crystal-powered device that can transform humans into monsters. Johnny is curious and follows Van Helsing into his laboratory, which is filled with bizarre inventions. Van Helsing warns him not to touch anything until he finds the device. He brings out a glowing crystal, explaining that it can turn any human into a monster. To test it, they try it on Van Helsing's pet guinea pig, and it works. The animal transforms. Johnny immediately insists on being transformed too. Van Helsing points the beam at him, and suddenly Johnny turns into a huge monster. Meanwhile, Dracula tries to hide from Mavis and Erica but hears a strange sound. He goes to the basement and is shocked to see Johnny as a giant monster. Johnny cheerfully says Van Helsing helped him and that he can't wait to show Mavis. He tried to stop him because he knew Mavis would be upset if she found out that Dracula was the reason her husband turned into a monster. At that point, Dracula took the transformation device from the lab so he could restore Johnny to his normal self. On the way, he ran into Johnny with Dennis, who was surprised by Johnny's new look. Dracula put Dennis to sleep magnetically and realized that Johnny hadn't actually transformed, it was just an ordinary monster impersonating him. He snatches the device to reverse the transformation, but in the struggle, the crystal beam hits Dracula and he transforms into a human. Dracula falls out the window, helpless because he can't fly anymore. Johnny saves him. Everyone in the hotel is shocked when they see Johnny turned into a monster and Dracula turned into a regular man. Dracula, no longer a vampire, is unable to use his powers. They rush back to Van Helsing, who explains that the crystal powering the device is extremely rare. The one they used is now broken. The only way to fix everything is to travel to South America, through the jungle, to find another crystal, though it's very dangerous. Dracula decides to go with Johnny to retrieve it, asking Frankenstein to keep it secret from Mavis. But while Dracula and Johnny are gone, Frankenstein and the other monsters accidentally touch the broken device, and they all turn into humans too. On the plane to South America, Dracula is extremely nervous. Meanwhile, Mavis goes into her father's room and finds a handwritten note in which Dracula admits he wants to retire and give the hotel to her. She realizes he must have changed his mind at the last moment, though she doesn't know why. When she asks Dennis about Johnny, Dennis repeats the lines Dracula taught him, that Johnny is fine and everything is okay. Mavis senses something is wrong. Back in the jungle, Dracula and Johnny struggle. Dracula, now human, is afraid of the sun and wild animals. At that moment, Johnny thought him now he was a normal human, not a vampire. He believed he no longer had to fear the sun that once could burn him, and that he could finally enjoy it like any ordinary person. After that, Dracula and Johnny got on a bus, which moved slowly because of Johnny's size. Johnny then decided to lift the bus himself and carry it, all while singing along with the passengers. Meanwhile, Dracula's friends tried to take him away from Mavis and the others so that no one would discover what had happened to them. But they failed, and everyone around them was surprised by their new appearances, unable to understand what had taken place. Later, Mavis saw the news featuring Johnny and Dracula, and one of Dracula's friends told her everything that had happened. She called her father immediately, but Dracula didn't answer. Instead, he asked Johnny to take him through the jungle so they could search for the crystal and return as quickly as possible. Johnny was very excited for the jungle adventure, unlike Dracula, who was worried and anxious. Along the way, Dracula grew exhausted and thirsty. He decided to step under a waterfall, only to find it filled with vicious fish. He rushed out quickly, covered in injuries. When Mavis tried to call him again, he threw his phone into the water and continued on their journey. Meanwhile, Mavis and Erica tried to figure out how this transformation had happened, so they went down to Erica's grandfather's lab, where they found animals. Mavis then realized that Johnny was in danger and would eventually grow uncontrollably like the pet. She and Erica decided to travel and rescue Johnny and Dracula before it was too late. Indeed, they set off with the rest of their monster relatives in Erica's airship. On the way, Erica told Mavis how her perspective on monsters had changed after meeting her father. She confessed that she used to hate vampires and monsters, but falling in love with her father changed her life completely. They soon reached the jungles of South America, where Erica suggested a faster plan. Everyone should leave the airship and take a car deep into the jungle. They did so, and using her supernatural hearing, Mavis was able to track Johnny and Dracula's path. Meanwhile, in the jungle, Johnny was glowing strangely. The group accused him of being the cause of their glow, but then they all fell off a tall cliff. Johnny was asked to use his wings to save them. To his amazement, he discovered he could actually fly, and he carried Dracula into the air. That night, they lit a fire and had a deep conversation. Johnny pointed out that Dracula's problem was always focusing on the negative side of things instead of the positive. Dracula admitted that raising his daughter alone had been very hard, and for a long time he had lived in fear something bad might happen to her. That fear led him to build the hotel to protect her and their family. Johnny, in turn, admitted he was grateful to be accepted into the family and treated as one of their own. Mavis and the others reached them. Mavis hugged Johnny, relieved, and Erica reassured Dracula that she still loved him as he was, even if he had turned human. Dracula was shocked to discover his friends and relatives had also transformed into humans. When Mavis asked Johnny what had happened, he confessed he only wanted to become a monster so that he could help her run the hotel, according to a rule Dracula had made up. But Dracula admitted that he had lied about the rule, which upset Johnny. Feeling betrayed, Johnny grew even larger and stormed off into the forest. Mavis chased after him, following his giant footprints after transforming into a bat. She apologized for what her father had done. Meanwhile, Dracula, Erica, and the monsters reached the deadly reflection cave where the crystal was hidden. They fell through a waterfall and nearly into lava before reaching the tunnel that held the crystal. Dracula went in first, only to discover the tunnel filled with glowing crystals. Erica contacted Mavis, shared the location, and urged her to bring Johnny quickly. Mavis tried to convince Johnny to follow her into the cave. Inside, the crystals glowed and frightened the monsters, but they held their ground until Mavis called out to them. At that moment, Johnny burst into the cave, smashing everything apart. They tried to escape before the cave collapsed. Suddenly, the real crystal appeared. Mavis grabbed it and tried to direct its beam at Johnny. To avoid the deadly sunlight, Frankenstein and the others helped her find the right angle so she could safely shine the beam on him. But Johnny didn't return to normal. Then Dracula decided to face Johnny directly. He reminded him of his own words about focusing on the positive side of things. He told Johnny that destroying the cave would ruin all the positive things in his life. He admitted he had been wrong, that he had failed to see Johnny's good side, and that he had only wanted to push him away from Mavis out of fear. Johnny was touched, calmed down, and embraced Dracula. At that moment, Mavis directed the crystal's beam again, and this time Johnny returned to his normal self. Mavis hugged him, and Dracula hugged him too. The rest of the monsters also reverted to their true forms. On their way back, they discovered that the hotel had been destroyed by Erica's pet, which had turned into a monster. Dracula wept for his ruined hotel, but Johnny promised to rebuild it. Dracula agreed, but insisted it should be rebuilt in their style, not his, because this was a new chapter in their lives. A year later, Dracula was surprised to see that Johnny had rebuilt the hotel exactly the same as before. The family returned to live together happily in the new hotel, enjoying their lives side by side. The story ends. If you like it, don't forget to like, subscribe, check the backup channel for real movie summaries in the first comment, and catch the previous videos. Bye!